Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by, and if you're not, thanks for coming back. In my last video, I said I was going to take a look at some books by an Elvis author that we sadly lost last year, and it wasn't until afterwards that I realised that it was actually in January this year that we lost the author in question, Trevor Simpson, so I do apologise for the error. Yorkshireman Trevor had been an Elvis fan since 1956 and he'd written for numerous publications worldwide. He also released no less than 5 books for the Follow That Dream label. 2 entitled His Songs of Praise Volume 1 and 2, which I will probably cover at a later date. But what I'd like to focus on today are 3 separate books looking at the early Elvis releases in the UK. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the best of British. Here in the UK, Elvis's early records weren't on the RCA label as they were in the US and for a lot of the rest of the world. Here, the HMV label licensed the rights for the early releases. So the first book in Trevor's series concentrates on the HMV years, 1956 to 1958. Elvis, the best of British. Now, being as these books are on the Follow That Dream label and are only released in limited runs when they come out, they do command fairly high prices now if you want to get hold of them. They can range usually anything over the £100 mark. But if you're lucky, on the likes of eBay, you might get an auction where it finishes at an odd time of the day and not many people are bidding or what have you. And there are still some bargains to be had. This particular copy, the first volume, is the hardest to get hold of. But I was quite lucky. I picked this up in an auction and I ended up paying £56 for it, which, bearing in mind the year it starts at is 1956, I took that to be a rather good omen. And I do like a bit of synergy. But having said about the vagaries and varieties of prices, Volume 3, I had a look on eBay the other day, and recently it sold for £120 in one auction. But then, not all that long afterwards, somebody managed to bag a bargain at £29. So it just goes to show, you know, it's a bit of a lottery where it comes to the likes of eBay. So what do you get in these books? What are they all about? Well, at the very beginning, you get a brief history of the HMV label, how it was founded, how it progressed, how it developed, etc., etc., which a nice little bit of background detail into what is to follow. Because it's an FTD book, it is, as you'd expect, lavishly illustrated and really, really nicely put together. I don't think there's a single FTD book that you couldn't say that about. This is one of the later books that they branched out into that became real chunky, heavy coffee table books. You've noticed a pattern probably with the last few videos in that I like a bit of a workout where it comes to a hefty book. But yeah, beautifully laid out. Let me just give you a little flavour about what kind of things you can expect to see. So there you go, look, really nicely put together. And then the first section looks at the HMV singles, and what Trevor does is he goes into depth about each song. So this isn't a you know, this is the single, this is what the cover like this is what the label, although there wasn't covers on the early HMV singles. In fact, we didn't get picture sleeves in the UK for quite a considerable time. No, what Trevor does is he looks at the tracks themselves and he goes into depth. So this volume 1 on its own looks at 50 different songs throughout those years, 56 to 58, and gives you oodles and oodles of details about them. Let me show you what I mean. So, there we go, Blue Moon. You get the details of the composers, the date that it was recorded, the master that was used, where it was recorded. But then you get the history of the song itself. the songwriters and, you know, how they developed the song, how it got to Elvis, how he would have first heard it, who recorded different versions of it. The level of detail is quite spectacular. It really is an absolute treasure trove, this book. It goes into each of the singles released in the UK. There we go, look. Lieber and Stoller, Hound Dog. So you get to understand all about the creation of the song itself, where it came from, the various people that had recorded it before Elvis got to it, if he wasn't the first to record it. And it's one of those books that you can just dip in and out of and learn so much detail and background. As I say, lavishly illustrated throughout. And each single covered in detail, and the songs on each of the singles, A-sides and B-sides. And then we get EPs. Somewhere, he says. There you go. Details of all the various labels of the early releases. A picture of Nipper in the background. I learnt so much from this book. Trevor's obviously one of those authors that loves his research and loves going into detail, and you know, that's right up my alley. I love a bit of detail myself. So, another H&V EP here. Good Rockin' Tonight. You see the labels. And to prove me wrong, there's a picture sleeve. So never listen to a word I say. Released September 1957. Tracks: Blue Moon of Kentucky, Good Rockin' Tonight, Milk Cloud Blues, and Just Because. Oh, that's right, yeah. I just realised I'm talking rubbish. These are the EPs. The EPs did have covers, picture covers. It was the singles that didn't. Here's the Love Me Tender EP. All the details surrounding that. The labels, various covers. No covers from other territories also. Love Me Tender recording sessions. Promotional bits and pieces. It's all in here. It really is comprehensive, to say the least. Just gorgeous. And there we go. Details of Let Me from the EP. Writers, date recorded, master tape version. And so it goes on. And then the book moves on to albums. And what we get is the very first debut album. Known in most places as just Elvis Presley. But here in the UK, as you can see from that shot of the back cover, it was called Rock and Roll. And as it goes through track by track, if there are tracks on here that weren't on singles, then just as the rest of the book does, it goes into details about the track, composer, the recording of it, the history of the track, etc, etc. Absolutely beautiful book. And what else have we got? There we go. That's Alright, the track that started it all, Arthur Crudup, details about the track, the recording, the various versions, just fab, absolutely fab. And Then we move to the second album. Now that's an interesting one here in the UK, because whereas most of the rest of the world got one cover, we got a completely different cover. So just to give you an example, this is a later pressing, but sorry about the glare. That was the cover shot that certainly the US saw, and a good deal of the rest of the world. Not here in the UK though, no. We like to do things differently for some reason. So we got an album called Elvis Presley #2. And that was the cover that we got. And I must admit, I'm torn between the two. I think both covers are absolutely brilliant and absolutely iconic. But I've always had a soft spot for the UK one. And that cover didn't last long, because when it was later repressed, they used a shot from the '68 special on the cover, which I'm not quite sure why they did that, but hey ho. So yeah, same format. You get first and foremost details about the album itself and its release, and then we get lots of details about the tracks if they haven't been covered elsewhere, composer, recording, etc, etc. Absolutely brilliant. This being a Follow That Dream release, it's not just the level of brilliant detail in the writing, the gorgeous illustrations, the fantastic layout. Every Follow That Dream book also comes with a CD. It's what the label exists for, the music. And this is no exception. In fact, this comes with 2 CDs. So what you get are basically everything that the book talks about. Hopefully you can see that in detail. Love the design on the CDs, echoing the content of the book itself. There's nothing particularly rare or unreleased on any of these, although what is fascinating, you do get a couple of songwriter demos. Down the bottom there you'll see Heartbreak Hotel and Paralysed, and they're fascinating in themselves. So there we have Volume 1. By 1958, UK releases began to be put out on RCA, distributed by Decca, and that's what the final 2 volumes in the series cover. There we go. Now it's the RCA years and not the HMV years. This one's 1957 to 1958. Each of the books follows the same format. You get a bit of background, and then it goes into the singles, the EPs and the albums, and track by track it picks out all the same level of detail and information that you got in the first volume. So let me just show you some examples so you can see for yourself. Singles, details, composers, glorious, glorious artwork. Don't. Hound dog. Fantastic stuff. EPs. RCA EPs. And then details about the tracks on the EPs, composers, etc, etc. And then we get the albums. Loving You. I think you'll agree that just the layout, just the way it's put together is absolutely beautiful. King Creole. And all the detail about it. As with the previous book, you get a CD, single this time. Featuring a lot of the music talked about in the book itself. And with this one, you do get even more songwriter demos, which, you know, I'd highly recommend anyone to listen to those because they give a fascinating insight into the genesis of the songs themselves. Here we go, Volume 2. So last, but definitely not least, Volume 3, 1958 to 1960. Same format as before, singles, etc, etc. Details about the songs. Just brilliant. Love it. So if you don't have these and you can get a copy, I'd say they're well worth it. What have we got? 1960 EP. Touch of Gold Volume 2. And finally, onto the albums. So we have the album known in the rest of the world as For LP Fans Only, but here in the UK, it was just Elvis. Lovely detail about all the tracks, as with all the others. And then, last example I'll show you for today, Elvis is Back. What an album. And as with the others, CD featuring selected material featured in the book, and there's also songwriter demos on this one as well. Utterly fantastic. I think you'll agree, a fitting tribute to Trevor Simpson. Thanks for the books, Trevor. They really are something special. So before I sign off for today, I just wanted to say that one of my subscribers, I know, I have subscribers. It's as much of a surprise to me as it is to you, believe me. But anyway, one of my subscribers that watched the first video had asked me if I'd feature the Sun Records book that you could see during the walk around. And I just wanted to say, I promised to do that and I will. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. I do hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please remember to like and subscribe. And click on the notification bell if you want to be told when I'm releasing new content. Next time, I'm going to be taking a look at the vinyl artwork of Elvis Presley. Till then, take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.